There is an ingredient that costs $4 and stops acne at the source, not masks it, not dries it out temporarily, not gives you 6 clear weeks before it comes back worse than before. Stops it. At the level where it actually begins, inside the follicle, in the sebaceous gland, in the invisible chain of events that starts long before you ever see a pimple in the mirror. One consistent application on clean skin and the cycle that has been running underneath your face for years begins to break. Women have been using it in some form for over 1,000 years. A Japanese clinical trial in 2002 documented its mechanism with more precision than most prescription treatments your dermatologist will write you a script for today. Indigenous healers across Southeast Asia identified its anti-inflammatory properties centuries before the word sebum existed in any language. And right now, a $4 bag of it sits in the supplement aisle of your pharmacy, completely unlabeled for skin, completely ignored by every beauty brand that charges you €60 for a fraction of the same molecule dressed up in a frosted glass bottle. This is not a hack. This is not a trend. This is the story of niacinamide. What it actually does, why the acne industry has spent 40 years steering you away from it, and exactly how to use it tonight. Welcome to Dr. Redmond, Skincare for Women. Let's get into it. Before I tell you what niacinamide is, I want to tell you what acne actually is. Because most women who have struggled with breakouts past their 30s, and statistically, that is more than 50% of women in this age group, have been sold a fundamentally wrong explanation of their own skin. The story you were told goes like this: your pores get clogged, bacteria moves in, inflammation follows, you get a spot. The solution, therefore, is to kill the bacteria and unclog the pores. That is why every prescription your dermatologist has ever written you falls into one of 2 categories: an antibiotic that kills bacteria, or a retinoid that forces cell turnover so fast that the clog cannot form. Both of those approaches work, to a degree, and for a while, and then they stop working. Or they work on your chin, but not your jawline. Or they clear your skin for 3 months, and the moment you stop, everything comes back. Sometimes worse. Because your skin barrier has been so stripped and compromised that it is now overproducing oil to compensate, and the cycle restarts from a worse baseline than where you began. This is not bad luck. This is what happens when you treat the symptom while leaving the cause entirely untouched. Here is what the research has known since at least the 1990s, and what nobody in the commercial skincare industry has any financial incentive to explain clearly to you. Acne does not begin with bacteria. It begins with something called sebaceous hyperactivity. Your oil glands producing more sebum than your skin needs, at a rate your follicles cannot manage efficiently. That excess sebum, when it mixes with dead skin cells and the natural microbiome of your face, creates the anaerobic environment where Cutibacterium acnes, the bacteria associated with breakouts, begins to multiply. The bacteria is not the cause. The bacteria is what moves into a house that the cause already built. Which means that if you only ever address the bacteria, you are demolishing the tenant and leaving the house standing. New tenant, same problem, 6 weeks later. The cause, the sebaceous overactivity, the excess sebum production, the chronic low-grade inflammation that keeps the oil glands in a state of permanent overdrive. That is what niacinamide addresses. Directly, measurably, at the molecular level. Niacinamide is a form of vitamin B3. It is water-soluble, stable at room temperature, and costs almost nothing to produce, which is precisely why it has never been the centerpiece of any major skincare campaign. You cannot build a luxury brand around an ingredient that costs pennies per effective dose. You cannot justify a €60 serum when the active compound is available in its pure form for €4 per 100 grams from any reputable supplement supplier. What niacinamide does inside your skin is not magic. It is chemistry, and it is documented. First, it directly inhibits the transfer of melanosomes to keratinocytes, which is the biological mechanism behind post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, the dark marks that acne leaves behind. This is why women who use niacinamide consistently report not just fewer breakouts, but a progressive fading of old acne scarring that no amount of vitamin C serums at 20 times the price manage to touch. Second, and more importantly for this conversation, niacinamide regulates sebum production. A study published in the Journal of Cosmetic and Laser Therapy in 2006 demonstrated that a 4% niacinamide moisturizer reduced sebaceous secretion rates significantly over a 4-week period. Not by drying out the skin, which is what benzoyl peroxide and most prescription topicals do, triggering the rebound overproduction cycle. By communicating directly with the sebaceous glands and moderating their output at the source. Third, it strengthens the skin barrier. It increases the synthesis of ceramides, the lipid molecules that hold your skin cells together and keep environmental aggressors out. This matters enormously for adult acne because a compromised skin barrier is both a trigger for breakouts and the inevitable consequence of most conventional acne treatments. Niacinamide breaks that loop. It treats the acne while simultaneously repairing the damage that treating the acne has caused. And fourth, the mechanism that a Japanese research team documented with remarkable precision in 2002. Niacinamide has direct anti-inflammatory action on the pathways that activate sebaceous gland overproduction in the first place. It does not just manage the downstream consequences of inflammation. It interrupts the upstream signal. The bacteria still dies. The clog still clears. But the environment that made both of those things inevitable, that is what changes. Now I want to talk about the market for a moment. Not with anger, with clarity. The global acne treatment industry generates approximately $13 billion per year. That number is projected to reach $20 billion by 2030. The vast majority of that revenue, the prescription antibiotics, the branded retinoids, the clinical peels, the specialized cleansers, the SPF Plus active combination products, depends entirely on a single economic principle that I want to name directly here. A recurring problem is worth infinitely more than a solved one. Your dermatologist is not your enemy. Most dermatologists are extraordinarily well-trained clinicians who work within a system that was built around pharmaceutical products with patent protection, clinical trial infrastructure, and insurance reimbursement pathways. Niacinamide has none of those things. It is a vitamin. It cannot be patented. No pharmaceutical company will ever fund a $10 million clinical trial for an ingredient they cannot exclusively license, which means that the evidence for niacinamide, and there is a great deal of it, distributed across independent dermatology journals, cosmetic chemistry publications, and nutritional science literature, will never be assembled into the kind of coherent, heavily marketed narrative that gets a molecule prescribed at scale. Instead, what happens is more subtle and more effective than suppression. The information is just never translated. It sits in academic journals behind paywalls. It gets referenced in the ingredient lists of mid-range skincare brands under its technical name, buried after 17 other components, next to a packaging claim that says, with vitamin B complex, in a font too small to read without your glasses. You are not uninformed because you failed to find the information. You are uninformed because translating that information into plain language and putting it in front of you is not in the financial interest of anyone with the budget to do so. That is exactly why this channel exists. At Dr. Redmond, Skincare for Women, the work is always the same. Take what the research actually says, strip away the commercial noise around it, and give it to you in a form you can use tonight. No brand partnerships, no sponsored ingredients, no €60 recommendations for something that costs $4. Let me tell you exactly what to buy and exactly how to use it. Because the application matters as much as the ingredient, and getting it wrong is the most common reason women try niacinamide and conclude it does not work for them. Buy pure niacinamide powder. Not a serum that contains niacinamide. Not a moisturizer with niacinamide as the 4th or 5th ingredient. Pure powder, food grade or cosmetic grade, available from supplement suppliers, bulk cosmetic ingredient retailers, or certain pharmacies. A 100-gram bag costs between €3 and €5 and will last you, depending on how you use it, somewhere between 6 months and a year. You're going to make a 10% solution. This is the concentration used in the majority of published clinical studies showing sebum regulation and anti-inflammatory effects. It is also the concentration at which niacinamide is well tolerated by almost all skin types, including sensitive skin, without the purging, peeling, or barrier disruption associated with retinoids and chemical exfoliants. Take 10 grams of niacinamide powder, a level teaspoon, approximately, and dissolve it in 90 milliliters of distilled water or micellar water. Stir thoroughly. The solution will be completely clear. Transfer it to a small dropper bottle or spray bottle. Label it with the date. That is your serum. That is the €4 product that the $13 billion industry would prefer you spend €60 on in a frosted glass bottle with a French name. Apply 5 to 7 drops to clean dry skin every evening. Gently press it in with your fingertips. Do not rub. Follow with your usual moisturizer to seal it in. That is the entire protocol. In the first week, you may notice your skin looks slightly more matte. This is the sebum regulation beginning. Some women notice a mild flushing sensation the first 2 or 3 times they apply it. This is a harmless niacin flush response that disappears within days as your skin adjusts and is not a sign of irritation or allergy. By week 2 to 3, the reduction in new breakouts typically becomes visible, not because the existing spots have been treated, but because the environment that was generating new ones has started to change. By week 6 to 8, which is the minimum time frame any honest skincare educator will give you for evaluating an active ingredient, the combination of reduced sebaceous activity, improved barrier function, and anti-inflammatory action at the follicular level produces a cumulative change that no single mechanism treatment achieves. A woman in our community, 51 years old, dihormonal acne along the jawline for 12 years, 3 rounds of prescription antibiotics, 1 course of a low-dose retinoid that she stopped because of the dryness, wrote to Dr. Redmond after 10 weeks on this protocol. What she described was not just fewer breakouts. It was that the texture of her skin between breakouts had changed, that the redness she had assumed was just her skin had faded, that she had not reached for concealer on a Tuesday morning for the first time in longer than she could remember. The chemistry does not distinguish between a 25-year-old and a 50-year-old. The sebaceous gland responds the same way. The inflammatory pathway interrupts the same way. The ceramide synthesis increases the same way. What changes with age is the context. So the hormonal fluctuations that drive adult acne in women, the perimenopausal shifts in estrogen and progesterone that increase androgen sensitivity in sebaceous glands, Create a version of acne that responds poorly to treatments designed for teenage skin, where the driver is excess androgen activity during puberty. Full stop. Adult hormonal acne needs something that works upstream of the hormonal trigger, at the level of the gland's response to that trigger. Niacinamide works there. There is one more thing I want to give you, because I have watched too many women start a good protocol and abandon it at week 3 because they were not expecting this. Some women experience what looks like an initial increase in breakouts during the first 2 to 4 weeks of consistent niacinamide use. This is not the ingredient failing. This is the ingredient working. As the sebaceous glands begin to recalibrate their output, there is a transitional period where old congestion that was sitting below the surface begins to move. Spots that would have appeared over the following weeks appear together, accelerated by the same cellular communication that will eventually regulate the process. This is called purging, and it is a documented transitional response to active ingredients that normalize follicular function. It is temporary. It does not mean your skin is reacting badly. It means something is changing at a level deep enough to temporarily disrupt the surface. If you stop at week 3 because things look worse, you stop precisely at the moment the shift is happening. Stay with it. Lower the frequency if needed, every other night instead of nightly. But do not stop. The dermatologist who prescribed you 3 rounds of antibiotics did not warn you about rebound because antibiotics do not cause purging. They kill bacteria temporarily. And when you stop, the bacteria returns to an environment that is completely unchanged, and the cycle begins again, sometimes with antibiotic-resistant strains that are harder to treat than what you started with. Niacinamide changes the environment. That is the difference between a treatment and a solution. If you have stayed with me this long, you already understand more about the mechanism of your own acne than most clinical conversations will ever give you time to cover. You understand that a molecule documented in peer-reviewed literature across 3 decades, available in its pure form for €4, sitting in the supplement aisle of your pharmacy right now, has never been handed to you with clear instructions. Not because the instructions are complicated, but because nobody with the budget to hand them to you has a reason to do so. That is what Dr. Redmond. Skincare for women exists to change. One ingredient, one mechanism, one clear protocol at a time. If this is the context you have been missing through years of prescriptions and expensive serums and skin that cleared and returned and cleared and returned, share this video with someone who deserves the same information. A friend who has been fighting the same battle. A daughter starting to ask the same questions. Not to be right. Because the right information at the right moment matters. Subscribe to Dr. Redmond. Skincare for women. Every video on this channel is built on the same principle. The research exists. It is accessible. And you deserve to have it explained to you clearly. The next video is already waiting for you. It covers the ingredient your skin barrier needs to rebuild itself after years of treatments that were solving the wrong problem, and why every moisturizer on the market is formulated in a way that makes sure you keep buying it every 30 days instead of needing it less. I will see you there.